first thing I ask them, like, well, how many cold emails are you sending? How many cold calls are you making? How many people did you meet with for meetings? Like it's all the actions, right? So many times people want the results, but they don't want to take the actions that are required to get them the results. And that's all that it comes down to, is just taking those actions.
Welcome to the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast. Let's get into the show.
Hey guys, it's Agostino. Getting your name out there, building a personal brand is going to be absolutely paramount to getting deals. So you have to become very, very good at your digital marketing approach, right? And what that means is getting in front of potential sellers, getting in front of brokers, getting in front of investors, so they know who you are, what you're about, and what you can do for them to help them make more sales or make more money. Well, today's guest understands this. He is a digital marketing expert, and I wanted him to really talk to you guys about what he does and how he can help guys like us to, of course, leverage digital marketing to build success in the online world. So with all that, I'd like to welcome Luke Shankula to the show. Luke, thanks for coming on, bud.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and really just excited to kind of give some information and some value to people that are listening to the show, because as you mentioned, digital marketing is huge, right? I mean, it's crazy to see how many people are starting, basically start online when they're buying almost anything these days, right? And so being able to capture the attention on the platforms that are available to us today, Facebook, Google, Instagram, LinkedIn, things like that, using organic and paid strategies is pivotal for building your brand, for getting new leads, for all of these different aspects of your business, right? And you need to have some sort of leverage in order to continue to grow and scale at a certain level, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's, you just touched on a bunch of different things there. I think that using LinkedIn especially is probably the most prevalent one when it comes to building up that, I guess you can say, that brand when it comes to getting in front of investors. Usually LinkedIn is the go-to, right? But as you know, it costs a great deal of cash to actually leverage LinkedIn's advertising platform, right? I mean, they're far more expensive than, say, a Facebook or an Instagram or anything else like that, right?
Yeah. I mean, LinkedIn. So we don't do a ton of LinkedIn paid advertising, but we do a lot of, especially for ourselves, we use LinkedIn as a tool to connect with more of the business type of people, right? And so, going direct to the consumer, if you want to go find some houses, you distress properties, things like that, might not be so great on LinkedIn. But that's where you're going to use platforms like Facebook, Google to find those sorts of people. But from a standpoint of networking, finding people that are more likely to sort of fall into that professional bucket, you're going to find those people on LinkedIn. So yes, you could leverage LinkedIn ads. I've heard of a lot of people having massive success, and that's one thing that we're looking really to crack this year as well. From a recruiting standpoint, it's really good. But there's a lot of organic strategies you can use. Obviously, content strategies using LinkedIn to grow your network of the sort of people that you want to engage with, right? So if you're looking for investors, you're looking for people that are going to fund the deals, that's where you're going to go to start finding those people, because as long as they have like the right profiles and things like that, you can actually be very, very specific. One recommendation, if you're going to use LinkedIn a lot, is to get the Sales Navigator version. I think it's like about $80 a month, but that will actually give you access to a lot more filtering levels. It'll also allow you to connect with more people without getting shadow banned. So there's a couple different things you can do. You can do connections. There's a couple different tools as well. If you wanted to growth hack, let's say growth hack, growing your connection is you can actually use tools. Technically, I'll say it is against LinkedIn's terms of service, but there is tools that allow you to automate some of these things, like automate connections. You got to be careful though, because people can tell, like, especially nowadays, there's a lot of people doing it. And so you got to be careful with being too automated and just pitching people right away as soon as they get, turn into a friend or whatever, as soon as they accept your invite. But what you could do is you could use these tools to send automated requests to very targeted people. And once they accept, then you can engage them manually in conversation. You can obviously post content that you want them to see. Let's just say you have a deal that you're looking for investors, things like that. You're able to leverage that network and as it grows, and especially if you're doing good content on LinkedIn, you're going to be rewarded by more reach, right? And so again, and they're starting to roll out a lot of things like Facebook has already, right? Like the live video feature. They're really pushing video, things like that, like Facebook has for the longest time. I think Microsoft bought them a year or two ago. And so they've really tried to become a little bit more of a social networking versus like a resume sort of site, right? And so LinkedIn is huge from that standpoint, from business to business. The one thing to note on that side of things is so many times people will go onto LinkedIn and they basically create their profile as essentially a resume, right? But the what you really want to do with LinkedIn is you want to use your job descriptions or the area that you put your jobs in as almost a sales page, depending on what you're trying to do, right? But you can actually use it as a sales page to actually engage the people that fall onto your page to say, oh, I want to talk to this guy, right? I want to talk to this person. Because if you're just saying, oh, well, I worked at this company here and I worked at this company here and I worked at this company here, that's not going to attract anybody. But if you're able to put testimonials, or you're able to put, hey, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, if you're able to write it out as almost like a sales page, this is what we do. And the next job description could be, this is something else that we do. And that just creates a more of like a profile funnel. Again, this is kind of some organic strategies to attract the business type of people onto your profiles, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you should mention that, because that's one thing that I started doing on our sites, on our pages, is to actually use that background photo as, like, say, social proof. So as soon as they go there, they see something that really describes who you are, what you're about, and what you can do for them. Right. And then as you go through the job descriptions, there's call to actions in there, right? It gets people excited about, just like I said, I got to talk to this person. They could change my life. It goes away from making it about me and more about them.
Right. It's the concept of what's in it for me, right? Like, you got to realize that the average person is consistently and constantly thinking about themselves, right? Everybody's always worried about, oh, John down the road, thinks this, that. The reality is they're thinking the same thing about you, right? And so if you're able to, in very simple terms, relay the information that you're trying to share in a way that makes sense to them, that's when you're going to win, right? When you're able to just do that. And especially when you're doing it organically, they're going to start reaching out. Like you said, call to actions within there, right? You don't get the business if you don't ask either, right? And so a lot of times too, it's just about kind of structuring it in a way that it makes sense. And you hit on that social proof as well, right? There's many different types of proof that shows that you're a credible person as well, right? So, testimonials, industry peers talking about you, being on things like podcasts and shows and things like that. Those are all different ways that you can leverage a proof of results, right? Upward spirals, another form of proof or authority, or way to improve your authority as well, right? If they can see that you're growing and continuing to grow, people like to attach themselves to people that are successful, really, right?
That's right. Well, one thing that we know across the board when it comes to social media, it really doesn't matter how, is the funnel. The funnel. It all comes down to building a good, solid funnel. That it doesn't matter where you're picking up your potential people that may be investing with you or maybe throwing deals your way, but that funnel is where it all begins. And I know you touched on Facebook. I know that you found a lot of people on Facebook really helping out your clients in their business. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how does that look? How does that setup look? How do you end up using and building a funnel to help pull people in to hopefully eventually at least open up a communication with them? Because you might get, I don't know, 10,000 people that maybe click on that photo, but you may only talk to maybe 100 of them. And only out of 100, you only get a small percentage that actually convert into someone that's going to invest in you. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, so from the funnel standpoint, well, before we get to the funnel real quick, the one thing obviously is consistency. So many times I see people, they throw $100, throw a couple $100 at it, and they're like, this doesn't work, right? So just like any medium, a lot of times it's not the medium that doesn't work. It's the person that's trying to use that medium, right? And so it's iterating and making changes to your approach to see what works, what doesn't work, right? And so the first thing that I would say is, from a funnel standpoint, one thing, like when I first got started doing marketing, is I thought it was get as many people as possible as cheap as possible. That's the goal, right? And I realized pretty quickly that I personally wasn't retaining clients because they weren't converting deals, right? Because there was too much work that had to go in. And the reality is most people didn't have the processes in place to handle a massive amount of leads either. And so a couple different things, right? One, we started to use longer sort of survey funnels, right? So we started asking more questions, increasing intent, finding out whether we could find more quality by essentially increasing the friction within the process, right? So, some people might tell you that's not what you do. You want to get as many people as possible and then just nurture them. It just depends, right? What sort of a process do you have? If it's just you, the chances of you being able to call 300, 400, 500 leads a month is not gonna, it's not gonna make sense, right? So it makes more sense to find more quality, more people with intent, more people that actually fall into the buckets that you're looking to find, right? And so by asking qualifying questions, obviously you're going to ask name, email, phone number, but you're going to ask them certain questions that are going to qualify or disqualify them from what you're trying to accomplish, right? And so you're actually able to leverage the surveys, and you're able to see, all right, what are the people that are going to qualify? So like what we do with our mortgage stuff is we actually segment based off of credit scores, right? So anybody that has a 620 credit or less, we actually tell Facebook, we don't tell Facebook that is a lead, right? So what we're essentially doing is anybody that has a 620 credit or better, we're sending that data to Facebook and saying, we want more people that look like these people because they have a 620 credit or better. It's self-reported, right? And so that's something that you can start thinking about, right? It's like, how can we find the sorts of people that are like that? What is it that we can do? What is the data that we can feed Facebook in order for them to give us back a better qualified person, right? As the more data you have, generally more data you have, the better quality you have as well, right? Because Facebook is able to take that data and then go out and find people that are similar to that. But if you're just feeding it bad data, it's just going to keep giving you bad data because like, oh, this is exactly what they want. They're getting the cost per lead at this cost, but it's like, that's not what ultimately we're looking for. We're looking to increase intent and increase quality. Part of that goes down to, the funnel. The other part of it comes down to the ad creative, the ad copy. Those things are also going to make a difference in attracting the sort of quality or the sort of people that you're looking for, right? So like, again, going back to kind of the mortgage example, we used to talk about 0% financing and talked about low down payment and low credit. And guess what we attracted? Those sorts of people, right? People that don't have bad credit, things like that. So start thinking about who's your ideal client. Who is it that you're trying to attract and go after that, right? Go after that specific person and start thinking about what is it that's going to attract them to fill out this form, right? Again, you're looking for distressed properties. Start thinking about what does that person look like, right? You're looking for maybe investors. What is that sort of person thinking about and looking for? What is it that they want out of a relationship, right? And I think especially for stuff like that, if you're looking for the sort of investors, things like that, that's probably going to be, again, LinkedIn's probably going to be the better, where you're kind of building that almost like a belly to belly sort of a relationship with people. But using potentially social media to stay in front of those people, right? So again, consistency is huge. So, one of the things we've done is we spent a good amount of money just retargeting, giving value, testimonials, things like that. And so over time, people start to know you, like, man, you follow me around everywhere, right? And if you're able to do that, leveraging the different platforms, Google, Facebook, YouTube, Google Display Networks, is some of the things that we're starting to roll out as well, is just being able to have a collective, just basically retargeting them everywhere. And they're like, man, this person must know what they're doing because they're following me around the whole entire internet. And so that makes a huge difference from that standpoint too, from an authority standpoint, from a brand building standpoint. That's huge from that side of things.
Well, but you touched on a bunch of things there, and something important to really touch on is that you have to understand who that audience is. That one example you gave is it's a very good example. If you're looking for investors, what do they look like? Are they people planning for their future? Maybe they're concerned about their financial future, right? Your message and your creative needs to capture that thought. So when that person scrolls and they see that ad, they'll stop. Even for, because you only have literally 3 seconds to capture their attention. Right.
Well, especially with something like Facebook or Instagram or any of these platforms that are interruption marketing, right? Because that's ultimately what you're doing is you're trying to stop the scroll, and you just mentioned that, right? So the ad creative is going to be pivotal to stop the scroll, and then your ad copy is going to sell them on the click,
Yeah.
which then gets them to the survey, and then the survey needs to sell them on, basically filling out the information.
That's right. That's right. But I think that example you gave was a really, really good example of, okay, no money down, 0% financing, yada, yada, yada. You're going to pull in a person, an identity that has typically bad credit, doesn't have any
Right.
money, can't get the deal done, and cause you nothing but frustration and a bunch of wasted time.
Right.
So crafting that message, it becomes critical. But I think something else too that is often overlooked, and you talked about this a little bit earlier, is that when you first friend somebody, either on Facebook or on LinkedIn or whatever, it could be anywhere, then you immediately slap them with, "Hey, I want you to invest in this deal. Look at this, or look at this awesome deal that I have." I mean, as soon as I see that, I immediately want to defriend them. Honestly,
Right. Right. Right.
it's like,
Well, it's also overdone. I think at one point that was because there was when I first started doing LinkedIn stuff, 3 years ago, it was pretty much a wide open playing space, and but now everybody's on LinkedIn, like just going bond, just crazy. Just everybody's automating everything, and they're automating not just one step, but they're automating 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different follow ups, and you can just tell it's all
yeah,
automated, right? And even though LinkedIn has essentially kiboshed it, a lot of them are using cloud based tools. But even Facebook, I get those pitches all the time. Same thing, and I'm like, man, I don't want to work with you. Like, you haven't tried to even figure out anything about me,
right.
right? What is it that and so many times people like, and then people ask weird questions too. Like, you gotta be normal. Like, you don't just walk up to someone at the bar and start asking them, oh, hey, how are you doing?
You want to get
That's
married?
not the
You want to get married tomorrow? Let's do it. It's like,
that's not the question,
right,
right? Like, that's
right,
not how
right.
you start a conversation. Basically mirror real life when you use social media platforms, especially organically like that, because it's weird, it's creepy. Like, what you do, you click on a couple of their posts, you like their stuff, you comment back on some of their stuff, you start to build a little bit of the relationship, the non-creepy way, right? And then maybe you can jump in, hey, I've been seeing what you've been doing, it's been awesome, would love to have a conversation. That's different than just going straight to that pitch immediately, like, oh man, I see that you got money, let me just get some money from you, type of thing, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So
Well, one other key thing that we've done in our organization is try to deliver as much value as we possibly can. Give, give, give. Whether it's an article, whether it's webinars, whether it's anything like that, we're trying to give free information, help people get into deals, provide advice whenever we can, give people a place where they can congregate and talk to each other, things like that. It takes energy to put that together, and it takes time. So,
right.
but as long as you're giving to those other people, they'll appreciate it, and they'll hang with you, and then maybe they'll buy something from you in the way of a deal. Maybe they'll buy a course. Maybe they'll sign up for your webinar. Maybe they won't. Maybe they have a friend that might invest with you. Maybe they won't. But I think
Right.
there's a certain thing of just giving, and I think that it's become very easy on social media to just try to get into a mode of take, take, take. And I think if you do that, you're making a very big mistake. You're making a very big.
I will say, with the caveat, um, for organic, for specifically when I'm talking about like organic, especially on Facebook, if you're using Facebook sort of platforms, that's the way I primarily built my business was through organic marketing up until about, I don't know, maybe a year ago, was all organic marketing on Facebook. Literally just adding my demographic, the type of people that I wanted to do business with, and posting things, right? Like posting results. But that being said, I see like I'm friends with some real estate because at one point I worked with real estate agents, and one thing that I see a lot is all they do is post listings, 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 listing. Guess what? It's crickets. Their whole profile is crickets, or they're sharing other people's content all the time, or it's always business. Realize people want to do business with people that are similar to them, right? And so I generally try to stick to a rule, right, of 30% business or less, 30% some sort of thought leader, some sort of value that you can provide, right? And that could be anything from like posting funny memes, jokes, stuff like that. Obviously not all memes, but laughter and making someone happy is actually valuable because you're actually changing that person's state, right? And the other third is just being a normal person, right? Being a human. Talk about your family. Talk about your day. What are you doing, right? Instead of just all business, business, business. No one wants to do business with someone that's all business, right? That's just not how people are. LinkedIn's a little bit different. I still would say mix in some of that stuff because LinkedIn is obviously more geared towards business. But again, people are people. People are humans, right? So just because the medium is changing, still try to approach it in a similar way. Obviously, not quite as much sharing of all the personal stuff, but you can still sprinkle that stuff in. But then maybe provide a little bit more value, right? Long posts, articles, things like that. But again, be careful too with sharing too much external links because the platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of these platforms don't really like links. They don't want people that are taking people off of their platforms. Right. So the more you can post things that keep them within their platforms, if you can give value within the post, you can post a video right there organically. Like posting a YouTube video to Facebook is going to surely give you zero reach. You're not going to very hardly reach anybody because they're fighting each other, right? They're enemies. And so think about just logically how that works, right? So the more you can keep people on that platform, give value away, show them you're a real person, show them those things that I was talking about earlier, right? You're a thought leader, you have results, you close deals, testimonials, screenshots, whatever it is, again, hey, another deal closed, right? That's just proof of a upward spiral. Getting into a podcast or getting onto a in a magazine or something like that. That's all ways that people start to associate you as someone who's on the rise and they want to start doing business with you, right?
Absolutely. So I think let's get into like, how does someone actually get started? So maybe someone's listening to this right now and they're like, you know what? It's a new year and I really want to focus on building my reach. I want to focus on getting in front of maybe some new investors. I want to get my hands on some new deals. I don't know where to start. What do you recommend, Luke? What should they be looking at?
So my thought process is choose like one or two mediums and just go all in on those, at least at the beginning. I think too many times, me included, we get stuck in this, not stuck, but we get the shiny object syndrome, right? Like, oh, there's chatbots and Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and YouTube and whatever the next Clubhouse is the new thing that just is kind of rolling out right now. And it's like everybody wants to do everything and be everything. And it's like choose one or two mediums and get really, really good at that. So whether that be learning how to do the paid ad side, whether that be getting really good at posting good content, so getting better at writing, whether that be doing outreach on LinkedIn, privately messaging people and starting conversations that way, booking appointments that way. There's so many different things you can do. But I just really think, and you're going to hear a conflicting thing from someone like Gary Vee, who's like, be on every single platform, dude, 62 pieces of content a day and all this kind of stuff. But the reality is, unless you have a huge team, you can't do that.
Right.
If you're like a one person team or whatever, like if you don't have anybody on your team, or if you're one or two people, like you're not going to have the capacity to do all that. So get really good at one or two things, right? So we got really good at Facebook, really just Facebook, and we've kind of sprinkled Instagram, and now we're starting to roll out YouTube. Obviously doing some of the LinkedIn organic stuff, but I got really good at Facebook long form leads. So generating long form leads using surveys on Facebook. That's like what we got really good at. And finally now, like 3 years later, we're starting to sprinkle in some YouTube and some other things because, Facebook's just kind of been crazy lately. But besides that, it's just, it makes sense because you want to diversify, where you're getting business, right? Referrals, social media, direct mail. There's all kinds of different ways that you can generate business. But you don't want to have only one single way to generate business because, as we've seen, Facebook can just shut down your profiles.
Yeah.
Right. And especially this year, I mean, Facebook, with all of the political stuff, I think we've lost 12 or 13 accounts in the last like six months. And 3 years, I've never lost more than 3 or 4 accounts.
It doesn't have to be your fault either, right? It doesn't have to be your fault.
No.
It's just like, we're just going to go ahead and close this account because we believe X, Y, Z, and then you're done.
Right. Well, a lot of it's algorithm based. And so, they think they were flagging our mortgage ads for political and social issues. And we're like, this isn't political or social, but it is what it is. And that's what you have to deal with. And you got to realize that, there's so much power with these platforms, especially on social media and stuff. How do you diversify some of that, and use different sources? But I still think at first you got to get good at one of those things, one or two of those things,
Yeah.
because you can get distracted and never get good enough at any of them and never see results with any of them. And you got to be careful too, because I heard a really good sort of video the other day. He talked about kind of the valley of despair, and so many times people will say, "Oh, that's a really good idea. I'm going to do that," and they're like, "Oh crap, that's actually really hard." And then they get to like the valley of despair, and instead of just keep going up and getting to the other side of that thing, which is success, they circle back around to the next thing. "Oh, that sounds like a really good idea. Oh wait, this is actually really hard. Oh man, I'm going to quit." And then they keep circling back and never get past this little lump. So just understanding that you put enough time into any of these sources, they're all going to make you money, right? You just got to figure out the way that you can. I mean, I'm sure there's people still out there using Craigslist. I think there is people using Craigslist to get deals,
Oh yeah.
right? I'm sure there is somewhere.
Oh yeah.
So, and that sounds crazy, but it doesn't always have to be something new.
Right. That's right. That's right. And I think part of it is that, especially for those folks that might be listening right now, that maybe they're not super technical. Maybe they don't know maybe they're not good writers either. So what do they do? How do they get the help that they need to really get started? What should they do?
I mean, it really depends. I mean, there's a lot of different options. When I first kind of started, I did a lot of YouTube. YouTube has a lot of content on there. There's companies, obviously that do this for people. So if you just want to focus on selling, you just find a good provider, a good provider that can provide what you're looking for, right? Like, does that more leads? Is that, more visibility? Are they doing LinkedIn for you? What is it that they're doing? And I think that's huge as well, right? Like, just kind of figuring out what is your strong suit. If you're just getting started, maybe it's just, making more cold calls and doing stuff like that, right? Like, so many times, I hear other marketers like, "Oh, you need to go on to Facebook," but it's like, cold calling still works, direct mail still works. They all still work, right? You can find ways to make all these avenues work. So I would just say, depending on where you are, if you're just brand new, go back to the basics, figure out ways you can do things for free, right? Organically, maybe do the outreach on LinkedIn. That's huge. You can even do the free version at first, until you kind of have a little bit more money. And then you reach out that way. There's a lot of, again, like I said, a lot of YouTube videos, or there's a lot of done for you companies out there that'll do stuff like that on Google, Facebook, all these different platforms, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think something you said though that still sticks in my mind is focus on one thing. Just focus on one thing, and that's funny because we have a coaching program. I tell them the same thing: focus on one thing, do that one thing very, very well. Then you can add a second thing. The first thing will keep
Right.
running, do the second. In your case, Facebook. You guys do Facebook incredibly well. It is possible to find investors on Facebook. It's not just LinkedIn. I mean, usually it's the same people that are on both
Right.
platforms. They're just expecting to see different information in different ways, but they're the same folks,
Right.
So it's kind of like really just focusing on one platform and preparing materials for that platform. And just like I said, either aligning yourself with someone that can help you with it, or getting the knowledge to make you a pro. Now, I'm a big believer in just getting the right folks to help you with it, honestly. I mean,
Right. Yep.
because if you're sitting there writing an article about why you should invest in multifamily or whatever, you're going to be blowing all kinds of time and effort doing that.
Yep.
Especially if you're not a writer, where you can just hand it over to
Yep.
somebody and they can crank it out in 20 minutes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's huge. And I think it depends on which stage of the game you're in, right? Like I think writing articles when you're first getting started is a waste of your time. I did that at the beginning. I wrote articles on why Facebook is so awesome and stuff like that before I even really had clients and stuff. I was messing around with my website. I was doing all these things that didn't actually get me the business, right? And so I hear all the time, other marketers are like, "Oh man, I'm struggling to get more clients, yada yada yada." And I'm like, the first thing I ask them, like, "Well, how many cold emails are you sending? How many cold calls are you making? How many people did you meet with for meetings?" Like, it's all the actions, right? So many times people want the results, but they don't want to take the actions that are required to get them the results.
Yeah.
And that's all that it comes down to, is just taking those actions, because there's the lead indicators and there's the lag indicators. And so many times people focus on the results instead of focusing on the actions that will lead to those results. And that's really all it comes down to, is if hey, if I just send enough emails, I'm going to get enough conversations where I'm going to close one person, right? Or if I send enough direct mail, I'm going to find, you know, the next person that needs to sell their property, stuff like that, right? It's just taking those actions consistently, and not giving up. Because I see other people too, like, oh, I sent 100 emails and I didn't get any responses. It's like, all right, well,
It's
send another 10,000 and then tell me if you got any responses.
right. Sales is hard.
You know?
Sales is
Right.
it's tough stuff. I mean, that's the thing. Making cold
Yep.
calls is tough stuff, you know, and unfortunately, it's what it is. So you kind of have
Yeah.
to spend the time to really work on it. That's the long and short
Yep.
of it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. So, Luke, if you had a piece of bulletproof advice, what would you tell that person listening right now?
Man, I mean, I feel like I might have already said it, you know, because I do think it's important to be focused, and it's important to have that one thing that you're working at and working towards, and identifying what that is and working towards that goal every single day, right? And so, like, it took me a while to sort of figure that out. At the beginning of my business, I was, you know, again, I got distracted a lot, and I still get distracted by shiny objects, but like, I was like, I'm gonna become the best at running Facebook ads for the long forms. And that's what I focused on. I even got to the point where people called me long form Luke. It was just like a random little what's it called, a nickname, because that's just what I was always talking about,
Yeah.
right? And that's what all I did. And so I got really really good at that, and that really kind of built up, because you become the expert, right, at the specific thing that you do, right? So whether that be whatever it is that you want to do, just having a relentless focus on just I don't know, on just one thing, maybe one thing, couple things. Like, what is your vision? What do you want? And then again, playing the long game too, because too many times also I see people so stuck in finding the money today that they're neglecting or crushing relationships and things like that for the future. And it's like, how can you have a long-term mindset to set yourself up for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, not so that you get paid tomorrow, right? I think that's, again, that was two things, but it kind of came down to the same thing, right? Just being focused, and then also having that long-term vision.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. All right. So how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can check me out. You know, I'm on Facebook. I'm not doing as much. Again, like I said, I did a lot of organic marketing at one point, but it's, you know, as we kind of grew, I've kind of moved towards the paid, more automated version. But you can find me on Facebook. I think it's El Shankula, my personal profile, or you can go on our website, paragondmg.com, or shoot me an email at luke@paragondmg.com.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, guys. Hope you got some good value out of really building that self brand and building some of that awareness out there for your investors and for other pieces and parts that can help you grow your business. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next episode. Take care.
Hey, Agostino here, and I would love to connect directly with you. Text the word books to 202-410-4202 to receive weekly book recommendations from me.